Hello, everyone. You're listening to The Right Side of Gaming. I had some technical difficulties, but today we're going to be talking about Dimir or blue black decks in Magic Legends. As always, I want to remind you guys that this series is aimed more at newer players who may not have as many of the rarer cards yet. They may not have the same access to artifacts or equipment that you do. They probably aren't taking those into account as much when they're deck building. This is just a here's a place to get started type of deal. We'll mention some gear and artifacts and passing for sure, but the focus is going to be on spells and specifically the common and uncommon spells, although we will again mention some of the rare stuff as we go along so they have something to aim towards. But again, this is aimed at newer players. So to start with, if there's something that blue and black does really well in the card game and a little bit in Magic Legends, it's draw and discard. Now, black has a little bit more discard in the card game, not as much in Magic Legends, although there's a little bit, especially when you take into account some of your gear and artifacts. But there's still a little bit in the actual cards themselves, and there's definitely a lot of draw in blue and some in black. To start with, in blue, we have Muse Drake, which is going to draw you a spell when you summon it. Stitch Drake, draw a spell when it dies. Alchemy Wizard, you're going to make little creature tokens whenever you draw a card. Homrage Shaman, if you've got it out on the field already, will have an activated ability to draw a card, so you're basically just replacing it. You have a lot of your spells will have draw riders on them. So maybe it's not what you use it for originally or intend to, but it'll have a additional draw a spell at the end to sort of replace itself. Like Glint will give one of your creatures a buff for a little bit, and if it was at 50% or less of its maximum health, you'll draw a card. Likewise, Psionic Shatter, it's going to deal extra damage to enemies under a control effect, and if it does crit, you're going to draw a spell and replace it. Black has a little bit of discard and draw. We have Dark Gamble. You're just going to discard a card at random. You're going to get greater mana regeneration, so you're going to get more mana coming in to probably cast more draw spells. And Damnable Pact. Yes, I actually said the name this time because at this point I just don't care. Where you're going to draw a card, and it's an X spell, so you can continually pay more to draw more cards. You're just going to lose more health, but you do have some of that card draw in black. And then when you get into rare cards, you get into really good stuff like Tolarian Winds, which is going to both discard and draw. So you're going to discard all the other cards in your hand and draw that many. So if you're trying to find a specific card, or you need a specific activated ability, or you're trying to assemble a combo, this is a great way to do it. It's like, hey, I don't have what I need in my hand. Let's just toss all of it and get new cards. And then blue also has Thought Cadence. So whenever you cast a spell of a different type, if you're alternating between like sorceries or creatures or something like that, then you're going to draw a card and replace it. Now let's say you want something a little more blue leaning. If blue is good at anything, it's sorceries. So again, we have our cards like Alchemic Thaumaturge, which is going to make your sorceries cheaper to cast. You're going to have cards like Telestrike and Psionic Shatter, which are going to deal extra damage to enemies under control effects. And then with black, you've got a little bit different approach to your crit effects. Blue wants them to be under a control effect. Black just says, okay, if they're already at half health or less, we're going to deal extra damage. And if you're doing a bunch of damaging sorceries anyway, you're going to, get them down to where these will deal extra damage. You don't necessarily have to do as much setup for those. You're also going to have some choice with the sorceries you add to that. Maybe you want some healing sorceries. Black has some of those. You'll deal damage and heal yourself. Maybe you like damage over time. You have cards like Infest that will deal damage over time and apply lesser vulnerability so that they'll take more damage from your attacks. And it'll be in an AoE. Black has a lot of AoE effects as well. Oh, that one took a second to load for some reason. I'm sorry. And black definitely has some AoEs. You have cards like Impale that'll do damage at a location, Wailing Souls that's going to deal damage in a line, as well as some of that damage over time effect. You have Shadow Barrage, which will create a hazard. There's a couple of those hazard creating effects in black where, you know, it'll create sort of a spot on the ground. If enemies go over it or through it or whatever, they're going to take damage. And we actually have one of our regional enchantments that will increase the damage of hazards, which will increase the damage of your hazards as well. So I've seen a lot of people really playing up those hazard effects in those specific areas. You also have cards like Leech Outbreak, which combines some of these, and you have your AoE heal and your AoE damage over time. Now, when you get into your rarer cards, you have things like Spellstorm, which is going to reduce the cost of your sorceries. And then you have some really fun black rare spells that are going to, say, deal damage over time or inflict greater vulnerability and damage over time. But they spread to other enemies, and that's just a very fun and very flavorful black thing to play with. But with sort of the blue and black sorcery stuff, I mean, you can kind of play it up as thematic because you can get those vulnerabilities, your stuns, your damage over times, like bleed effects. And it feels very Dimir Assassin-y, even though the actual Dimir Assassin class probably wants something more like your draw and discard type of deal. Let's say you want to play something a little more black focused. There's one thing black is really good at, it's zombies. And while we do have some blue and black blue zombies in the card game, we're a little bit more limited when it comes to blue zombies in Magic Legends, although there is one. There's one. Though I expect there to be more over time, especially since I think we've had to fight some blue zombies out in the overworld. And if nothing else, you can set up your draw effects so that you have your black zombies that you really care about and you just continually draw into them. Well, you have cards like Rotting Fentusker, which wants you to sacrifice a creature when you summon it, and remember, it's a zombie. You also have Scathed Zombies, which is going to make a bunch of weak zombies, which you can sacrifice to Rotting Fentusker. You have Stitch Drake, which whenever it dies, it's our blue spell, it's going to draw you a card. A good way to get a creature to die? Sacrifice it to Rotting Fentusker. You have cards like Desecrate that wants you to sacrifice creatures to deal extra damage. You also have some more zombies, especially when you get into a little bit rare stuff like Ghoulish Infector, another zombie card, Corpse Fiend, another zombie card, and it's going to get buffed when creatures die, such as when you sacrifice them. You have Dread Overseer, that's going to buff up your other zombies. Open the Graves, which is going to create more zombies whenever you have a creature die. And then you have cards like Annihilation, which is just sacrifice everything. Whenever you get into your gear, your artifacts, you're going to be able to make more zombies. You're going to get a little bit more payoff for sacrificing creatures as well. And it works out a little bit better. So this is one of those I think you have to build a little bit more towards in the long run. But it can be fun to just have a zombie army at your beck and call. It's definitely a fun way to play if your computer can handle it, because let's be honest, there can wind up being a lot of creatures out on the field, which sometimes the game isn't really good at. Doesn't run as well when you have too much out on the field, at least for me, though I think some of the other people I've seen, even people with better builds, are also having some of those issues, so just take that with a grain of salt. But if you can handle it and you want to, zombie armies are just fun. But that's all we have for today. If you'd like to leave a like, comment, subscribe, that'd be great. Especially if you want to talk a little bit about how you built your blue-black deck. Give some other people some ideas. Maybe there's something I overlooked, something I missed. Maybe you've got a really fun combo or just some cards that work together that you really enjoy. Absolutely leave those down. I'm sure Any of the other newer players that stumble across this would love to see what you've got. And if not, that's okay too. I understand. Either way, I hope you have an awesome day, and I will catch you next time.